did that 10 or 15 years ago. And we're paying a price for that today, and we just can't afford to do it again. And so I'm going to be supporting Councillor Grimes, who I know is very determined to make sure that we push some of these things forward. And some of them just get stuck in the usual kind of, morass of nobody intending to really sort of delay it on purpose. It just doesn't happen, and it has to happen because the situation out there is already, with existing development, difficult and not acceptable, and it will only get worse if we allow this project, which I think is going to be a good project, but we allow this and other things to happen out there and not have the infrastructure at least accompany it. So those are the only comments I wanted to make on that, and I'll be standing shoulder to shoulder with Councillor Grimes and trying to make sure some of that happens ASAP. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll put the motions on the screen. Councillor Grimes, would you like a recorded vote?
Madam Speaker,
yeah.
Please. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, first motion, it's on the screen by Councillor Grimes. Recorded vote.
Councillor Fillion, may we have your vote, please? Madam Speaker, motion 1A carries. The vote is 26 in favor.
Okay, next motion. Okay, it's on the screen.
Madam Speaker, motion 1B carries unanimously. The vote is 26 in favor.
Item is amended.
Madam Speaker, the item as amended carries unanimously. The vote is 26 in favor.
Okay, thank you. Our next timed item is CC 32.1, the Ombudsman 2020 Annual Report.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Can you see me and hear me okay?
Yes.
This is Susan. Okay, wonderful. I understand from Councillor Carroll, who held this item, that she is seeking a short presentation. Is that right, Councillor Carroll? Yes? Okay. It'll be very short. I'm just going to share my screen. Madam Chair, I just want to check that you're able to see my screen and that you can still hear me okay.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of Council, through you, Madam Speaker, it's my pleasure to present the annual report for 2020 of my office, Ombudsman Toronto, which highlights the important work of my team last year. I know your time is at a premium, so I won't take much of your time. I don't have to tell you that the City of Toronto government plays a vital role in the lives of people in Toronto every day, but this has never been truer, I would say, than it was last year. To say that 2020 was an unpredictable and challenging year for our city is, of course, an understatement. And from the very start of the pandemic, people have had lots of questions. What's happening? How can they stay safe? What new rules and guidelines do they need to follow? What changes are there to city services? In the face of so much uncertainty, the need for fair and equitable city services that the public can rely on, and especially the need for clear and accurate and timely information, has never been greater. I want to commend the Toronto Public Service for the very hard work that they've done and continue to do under these difficult circumstances, and for the tireless lengths that they've gone to trying to provide fair service to the public during such challenging times. But I have to remind the city that fairness isn't a question of effort of the people doing the service. It's a question of impact on the people being served. And that's where the focus always has to be. I've observed that the pandemic has taught our city government many important lessons, but four which stand out for me are these. First, transparent, clear, and honest messaging that people can understand is critical. Public trust quite simply depends on this at any time and never more than during a crisis like the one that COVID-19 has created. During the pandemic, we've seen the public questioning the messages coming from all levels of government. And that's the first, I think, the most important lesson that I would say I have observed during this experience. The second important lesson I've observed the city learn is that there is huge value in working together across the organization, with other governments, and with people and communities throughout Toronto. We have seen different city divisions, departments, and organizations working together like never before. And the city has done amazing work with Toronto's communities. One great example of both of these things was the City Community Response Table, which the city set up early in the pandemic for the city and various community agencies who serve vulnerable people to share information and concerns. And that table met daily for several weeks and then weekly for several months. It involved several community agencies as well as staff from SDFA, Toronto Public Health, Shelter Support and Housing, Employment and Social Services, Parks, Forestry and Recreation, Toronto Public Library, among others, all working together in the public interest. It was really fantastic. The third lesson is that the city can make things happen more quickly than it ever thought possible. We saw many examples in the area of services for people experiencing homelessness. Also, the speed with which the city built new bike lanes across the city was amazing. And the fourth lesson, which actually may be the most important, certainly as important as the first, is that we won't have a truly healthy and prosperous city until we acknowledge and address the barriers that the most vulnerable and marginalized among us face. The social determinants of health are real, and the pandemic has starkly illustrated that. There are real inequities in Toronto which we must address to ensure that everyone in Toronto has the opportunity to flourish. So I really urge the city to take these lessons beyond the pandemic because each of them is essential and will be invaluable in helping the city serve people in Toronto more fairly. These are the sort of essential numbers that illustrate the work of my office in 2020. You'll note that the number of cases increased again last year. And it's also, I think, noteworthy that since I joined the office in 2016, the number of cases we handled has cumulatively increased by more than 57%. I also want to note that we continue our proactive consultations with city staff to improve systems and services to the public before the complaints arise, rather than only dealing with complaints and problems. I've already mentioned the need for clear, accurate, and timely communication and the fact that it's more important than ever. However, as has been the case every single year since Ombudsman Toronto was created 11 or 12 years ago, poor communication was again the #1 fairness problem we found in 2020. I encourage all city staff to remember that good communication goes both ways. We think a lot about the conveying of information, and it is essential to convey information that's accurate, that's timely, and that's in a form that people can understand and use. But good communication also includes listening to people and seeking to understand their circumstances and their needs so that you can give them equitable service. I really believe that if all public servants working at the City of Toronto could improve the way they communicate with the public, remembering that it's not just about their effort, but about the impact on the people they're communicating with, the public's trust in and appreciation for their local government would improve dramatically. My team and I are proud to make the City of Toronto a fairer place for all people, and the report itself contains summaries of our public reports in 2020, as well as a sample of individual case stories. We also have a section in the report called Because of OT, OT being Ombudsman Toronto, which gives a few examples of concrete improvements to city services that were the direct result of our work. As you will see, several of them were directly linked to improving how people in Toronto experienced the pandemic. So there was a review of pandemic related communications by the city at our suggestion. Management of long-term care homes run by the city did an end-to-end process review of their COVID testing to make sure that there were no delays that could be eliminated. SSHA has dramatically improved how it reports, analyzes, and uses data related to services for people experiencing homelessness. Toronto Public Health, at our urging early in the pandemic, directed the public to the most current available provincial information about COVID outbreaks in Toronto long-term care homes, because the information that they were giving was out of date and not as accurate as the provincial information. The TTC is improving training for its special constables on how to serve people experiencing mental illness or distress, and also importantly on how to properly exercise their legal authority under the Mental Health Act. And TCHC is doing a complete process and communications review of how it handles overhoused households, which are households that have a unit that's too large for their needs. And also has agreed to cover moving costs for tenants who have to move to another unit because they are overhoused. I want to share this, the report has several testimonials in it. I want to share this one in particular from a member of the public, because while I'm really proud of the many ways my team and I made city services and administration better for the public last year, this is really what it's all about. Quote, "You make a difference because you allow people an opportunity to be heard. And you remind a big publicly funded institution that policy impacts real people and that they can do better. Sometimes they even listen." As you know, in closing, I will soon be retiring from my position as Ombudsman, although I have delayed my departure until mid-July to accommodate Council in appointing my successor. So I will be back before you a couple more times. But in presenting this report, I would be remiss if I didn't thank all the members of the public who brought their complaints and concerns to us in 2020, all the city staff who worked with us as we fulfilled our mandate, and they worked with us amid all the pressures that they were facing in their regular work, which we really appreciated. And of course, I want to thank the amazing members of the team at Ombudsman Toronto who give their all every single day and who, like so many others, have been working under very difficult circumstances during the pandemic. Finally, I'd like to thank the members of Council, you, for your support, trust, and confidence in me and my team. So with that, I'm going to conclude my presentation, and I, of course, welcome any questions you may have.
Thank
I'll
you
just
very
stop sharing my
much.
screen.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, could I have a motion to receive the Ombudsman report?
Madam Speaker, I held the item. I was hoping to speak, but my screen is still showing the report and doesn't give an opportunity to request to speak.
Okay, Councillor Carroll to speak.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I held the item because as our Ombudsman has just pointed out, this is her final annual report, even though there may be a couple of case reports to come. But because it is her annual report, I just wanted to highlight it. Having read it, I hope that the council members and staff members and the mayor, people who are involved in the appointment of our next ombudsman, will take close regard of this annual report and its actual tone, not just its contents, but its tone. It is under our current ombudsman, Susan Oppler, that this became not the office of an ombudsman of a particular name that everyone knows. They became Ombudsman Toronto, a team, a place where you go for fairness. It's not about one person and their take on things. It's about thoroughness, investigation, and a whole team taking part in that. It has also become a group that does outreach in exactly that way, to make sure that you understand this is a team and a service that is available to you, not a person, but a whole wraparound team. And that's the greatest benefit, to my mind. We had reports throughout Ms. Oppler's term that I think we can all agree have been really important to all of us. We learned things about fairness in dealing with things as mundane as utility and tax disputes, to how we deal with senior clients facing eviction in our own housing corporation, how staff across all divisions deal with a resident who may still be a ratepayer, but is struggling with dementia, which makes the customer service that much harder. And for me as a TTC commissioner, and for many of us, the Ombudsman's open letter to the TTC regarding special constable and transit enforcement officers changes, I think is really key, because the TTC did actually embark upon improvements. They actually did appoint Ruben Tomlinson to write a report on what we should do to better train our officers in anti-racism and equity. But the Ombudsman stepped up, as is her purview as an independent officer, to write an open letter to say the changes you are trying to make are taking an unacceptably long time. And that's something that came from an apolitical accountability officer, such as the Ombudsman, upon her investigation of what was happening with that report. That's really important for us to learn from our accountability officer, that it's not enough to just promise to do something and write a report, but then you have to do it. And if we're taking an unfairly long time doing it and actually affecting the change, we have someone who will say so on behalf of our residents. And I think it's all summed up by words in the Ombudsman Toronto annual report. They describe themselves in a way that I think is a statement we should be proud to make, in that we chose to even have an ombudsman is something we can be proud of. And their description of what they do, I think, is something we should be glad we offer our residents. It says in the report, "We are Toronto's bridge to fairness, the office of last resort for people who believe the city administration has treated them unfairly. We listen, we investigate, and we improve City of Toronto services." And that's the kind of statement that is without ego, but full of commitment, that I think really comes from the tenure of Susan Oppler in the Office of Ombudsman Toronto. And so I just want to close by thanking her very much for her service. And I think I speak for many. I know I speak for any resident in my ward who used her services. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll, then just move receipt of the report for information.
Be happy to.
Okay, Councillor Carroll is moving to move receipt of the annual report for information. All in favor? Show of hands. Carried. Thank you. And thank you to the Ombudsman. We'll now go back and we'll give an opportunity for the staff to put the screen up. We're going to go back to PH 22.7, update on Committee of Adjustment virtual public meetings. I want to remind members of council, the item before us is only virtual public hearings. That's the only item before us, so if you want to speak on the item only, that's what the debate will be. Councillor Cole to speak. Councillor Cole? He's not here? Okay. Councillor Villian to speak?
Yes, really briefly, because I don't want to chase Councillor Perruzza down the rabbit hole, but he did mention my name several times, so I just want to make it clear to people that, yes, I used to be much more active with Committee of Adjustment. Since the Integrity Commissioner's report, I am more subdued. Do not rarely, if ever, attend the committee myself. Do send in submissions, which that is okay to point things out. But I do want to say that it is to kind of the substance of the report. It is an extremely uneven playing field, and so my office does spend half of one person's week going over files, assisting residents with what's relevant and what isn't relevant, if they have objections to make, including sometimes telling them that their objection is irrelevant, which doesn't always go over well, but we try to help them with their presentations. And then if there is an appeal, we will work with them on that, and I will personally coach people, because I know legal and planning have difficulty in doing that. So, I do think, again, it is very uneven. The residents are not even remotely on the same level as the applicants, especially in a ward like mine, where you hardly ever get somebody coming in because they're renovating their house. It's almost always a home builder or land speculator who has the resources to hire professional staff to make their arguments. So I do think we need to assist residents a bit more than we currently are, and try to even things up.
Thank you. Councillor Holliday?
Thank you, Speaker. I have a brief motion, if I may ask clerks to put that up. There are a couple of parts to the motion, and they amend Deputy Mayor Bylau's motion by expanding a little bit of work. First is that we include the Ombudsman in the officials that are consulted with respect to any changes going forward. I think that the Ombudsman's office has expertise that could be helpful. I would also like to add to the scope to look at promoting good conduct by the applicant and general public participants. I use the words more scoping in recognition that there's already supporting materials and information that would help applicants and the general public prepare for an effective representation at the committee. And last is to look at the Committee of Adjustment procedures and processes based on tribunal best practices, and to look at supporting the panel members in how they achieve procedural fairness and natural justice. I want to open by saying that we should, as a council, recognize all of the good work done by staff, by the panel members, and by the participants in making it through a pandemic period and switching to an electronic process. It should not be lost on anyone the volume of work that has been achieved and the difficulties that have been overcome. And there should be some recognition that we are all humans in this process. Nothing is perfect, but it went pretty darn well. But I would be remiss if I didn't make a comment as a member of council that I have taken calls, like many of my colleagues in this meeting, of people that are very upset with how the process went. And there's various reasons for it. And I'm not going to pick or point out on any particular thing other than to say having a look would be healthy. But one very quick story stands out. I received a call from a member of the public who was not happy with the outcome, but she said, "Counselor, I am so embarrassed and upset with how it went at the committee that I would like the video struck from the official record. I don't want my family, I don't want my neighbors, I don't want my friends ever to find that on YouTube and look at the way that it went down at committee because I'm ashamed." And I haven't forgot that. And her comments had to do with the rebuttal and response that was made by the applicant in terms of what she had to say. It had to do with the way various people addressed her, by name or not by name. It had to do with the opportunity that she had to speak, and she wasn't satisfied with that. And it stuck with me. And I realized that of all the things that I hear, I keep hearing issues of contempt or apathy towards the Committee of Adjustment. I don't know what the answer is to fix this. I don't know that there's an easy one, but I have to bring it up and I have to ask for us to be continuously improving the process and to look at the different challenges that may have been posed through the electronic system, but not to forget the system at large. I think as a counselor, the best thing I can do is help people to prepare themselves to be really effective in front of the Committee of Adjustment and to focus their arguments. And that means that it becomes a better process for everybody. It becomes efficient. It means that the committee can do the work, the members can do the work. And if there's any way that we can help people do that, I know we've got stuff on the website, but maybe we can do a video. Maybe we could do a learning module that people could go through and not favor the applicants or the general public that speak, but give everybody a little bit of information to improve it. At the end of the day, I think all we can offer people is an opportunity to be heard. And if they walk away saying, I may not agree with the Committee of Adjustment, but at least the outcome was reached fairly. And my fear is there are people out there that don't feel that way. And that spreads like wildfire within the community. And that is a concern that needs to be addressed and worked on. So as I said, there's no magic answer in this. I just hope we keep at it. And it shows as a council that we are hearing these messages and are just trying to help the process along and support the panel members. That's the key. We need to support them so they can do their work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a motion, if I could put it up on the screen. And it's a very simple one. The council requests Chief Planner, Executive Planning staff to investigate enhancing and expanding the outreach to residents in regards to matters that come before the committee, so you can better inform them how the committee works, advise residents how to best present, and also city direct that this outreach to residents be made very explicit in all signage and communication, the letters. So that's what I'm asking for. And this is an important part of what the city does. As mentioned before, over 10,000 people participate. It's really grassroots participation over meaningful issues that come up in every neighborhood. And it's critical that we have a fair and even-handed process where people may not be able to agree with the decision, but at least they feel that they knew the rules and they were treated with respect, given that probably the majority of people that go have never been before a tribunal before. And, they're faced with developers, their lawyers, not in all cases. Some cases, it's just another homeowner who wants to put on an addition or add something. So there's different levels of, you might say, applications that come before our Committee of Adjustments. And it is, as mentioned, it's a very difficult job being on the committee and listening to all these applications, which are sometimes very complex. And I know I have a very active ward, and I have one person full-time my staff that she is very experienced Committee Adjustment, is there on a regular basis advising and basically explaining the process. But I think we as the city should have a helpline. We should have, you know, the ability for someone to pick up a phone and call someone at the committee and explain to them on the phone what they can and cannot do. Because, you know, right now we're tied to the, you know, internet and the WebEx meetings and all this stuff. But, you know, there's sure half the people of Toronto probably have no familiarity with getting on these WebEx calls, etc. So, but it's something that we can't do anything about because of the reality of the pandemic. So it is a frightening, sometimes intimidating, anxious time for normal residents. So I just want to ensure that as we go through these reviews, that we, even in the meantime, if we could just give people a telephone number, someone to call, and personalize this before they go to committee, so they get an idea of what to expect and to answer their basic legitimate questions. So that's why I put forth this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't. Councillor Carroll to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are lots of motions before us now, as is often the case when we have to split an item to affect a meeting. We've had some of this conversation this morning, some this afternoon, but I'm still very, very mindful of the questions and answers portion of this debate that we had with staff. And that's why when I go to vote, I'm simply going to vote for Councillor Bailau's motion. With respect to all the rest of my colleagues, and there's one other speaker after me, Councillor Perks, if you're moving a motion, I'm not going to vote for yours either. I'm going to vote for Councillor Bailau's motion because it is deliberately general. And if staff are listening, and I know that they are because I just flipped through the tiles to make sure that they're all still here, if they're listening, the conversations we had and the things we said to move all of the little accessory motions gave them insight into what we're looking for in this general review, gave them insight into what we think and what our residents think need to change. And I feel certain that they're going to consider those, but I don't want to wrap them up in word by word by word of those motions. I want them to take the general direction they're getting from the chair of the committee to which they will report back, and then do a really good job of writing us that broad review. They are going to engage. That's a requirement of this motion. Both residents, the various members of staff that can inform their review, and they are going to look at the concept of an advisory committee. All those things have been preserved and can lead to a great result. I've got some bugaboos myself. 3-car garages keep popping up all over my ward where they're not supposed to be. Homes that are supposed to be 2 stories and have already been given broad permission to be kind of tall are now starting to look like 3 stories. These things bother me, and I wonder what's going on over there in that apolitical process that things like that get through. I want to know how we keep those things in check without political meddling. And I think those sorts of things will come back to us in the review. And so for staff, I want to keep it simple, and I want to keep it generous, as Councillor Bailau's motion is, so that they're not cut off from reporting on things. In fact, they can look at the whole process, while all the while being mindful of the fact that it's pretty legislatively prescriptive. And that's what I like so much about Councillor Bailau's motion. It really does set expectations for both residents and councillors, but it gives a lot of freedom to staff to report on all of these matters. And so that's the singular add-on to this report that I'll be voting for. And I think that would be a wise move for any of us. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Perks to speak.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to support what Councillor Carroll just said. Listening to the debate today reminded me an awful lot of many debates that we have had at the Planning and Housing Committee over the years, particularly under the leadership of Councillor Bailão. City staff are aware of the issues that have been raised by all the different members of council, and because of that, we already have a review process in place. That's the sort of odd thing. Many of the questions that were raised today by members of council were things that the planning department is already in the process of reviewing and has made improvements on, and will continue to make improvements on. In fact, at the Planning and Housing Committee, we've established a process that we get an annual report from staff on how they are doing on implementing the kinds of changes you're asking for. Effectively, many of the motions that have come today would kludge up or cause that review process to take 2 steps back before they can take a step forward. Councillor Bailão's motion is very tailored to the processes already in place to try to make improvements with how the Committee of Adjustment serves the public. That's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing that I wanted to say is that there are 2 limiting factors we have to be aware of in terms of the way the public is supported in dealing with the Committee of Adjustment. And the first is money. If members of council feel that people need better training in how to conduct themselves in an unfortunately adversarial quasi-judicial process, that's a whole pile of money that we should be giving to the planning department to provide that service. If people feel that maybe we need to move from regular mail to registered mail, that's fine too. It will cost money. If people feel that we need to provide the kind of mediation services that are provided at the Toronto Local Appeal Body, that's fine, but that's money. So I hope to see all of you back at budget time talking about a very large increase to the amount of money that we give to the planning department to support the Committee of Adjustment in the way they communicate with and support the public. That's the first constraint. The second constraint, though, and I want to be real clear about this, is we are charged with establishing a neutral body for considering minor variance appeals following the principles of natural justice, which means that the obligations we have to provide good service to applicants are equally important in law to providing good service to people who oppose the application. That's a legal principle we can't get away from. This isn't similar to Toronto City Council making a decision about whether we have a bike lane or not. It's not similar to Toronto City Council making a decision about whether we invest more in public transit or in the Toronto Parking Authority. The decisions made there are not political decisions. They're quasi-judicial decisions that have to follow the principles of natural justice, which means we as the body that oversees them has to make sure that we're not gaming the system one way or the other. And that's a constraint. And that's a constraint that staff operate under. And it's a state constraint we have to be mindful of when we are talking about this and when we are giving direction to staff. The one motion that captures all of the things we just talked about is Councillor Bailão's, and that's the one I'm going to vote for.
Thank you. We can put the motions on the screen. Okay, the motion is on the screen. Motion 4 by Councillor Holliday, amending Councillor bylaws. All in favor?
Recorded, please.
Recorded.
Madam Speaker, the motion to amend Councillor Bylaws' motion carries. The vote is 14-8.
Next motion. Okay, so Councillor Bylaws' motion as amended. On favor? Show of hands.
Recorded vote, madam. I want to vote, I would like a recorded vote.
Okay, recorded vote.
Madam Speaker, motion 3 as amended carries. The vote is 19-5.
Okay. Okay, so that means that motion 2 is redundant. Motion 1 by Councillor Robinson.
Recorded, please.
Can you put
Madam Speaker, motion 1 carries. The vote is 16-8.
one is Councillor Cole's motion. Did we want a recorded vote? Did we want a recorded vote? I don't hear anybody. No? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Item is amended. All in favor? Carried. Okay, our next item is PH 22.8, recommended framework for the use of minister zoning orders in response to Bills 245 and 257. Councillor Holliday held the item down. I want to remind members of council if we can speed up the agenda so we can finish by 6 o'clock.
No questions, Madam Speaker. I just want to speak briefly.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Okay, Councillor Holliday to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My comments, I will be brief on them. I will not support the report. I know I've talked about minister zoning orders before in front of council. I looked at these reasons here. They're all laudable and positive things, but my understanding and interpretation of what this says is that council saying is that sometimes it's okay to have a minister zoning order. In my mind, that there's one time when we would like to see a minister zoning order, and that's when the council resolves that we want one. And in fact, the next report on the list is that. The report has come forward and has put before council the question as to whether or not we want to ask for one of the MZOs. And it lays out the reasons. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to vote on that and to express my opinion on it. I'm not going to support it. I'm not going to debate it. I have some different views on the process to get a rezoning and a minor variance done. But that's not important. What is important is the suggestion on this list is that it's either the city council or the minister themselves to exercise their prerogative to implement an MZO. And if they do that, then the public can hold them accountable. And if council asks for it to be done, the public can hold council accountable. This seems to suggest that there's a middle when sometimes it's okay. And I'm uncomfortable with that because that really means that either side can point and say that it's okay with them and it's not okay with them. To me, there should be two distinct times. So those are my comments that I wish to make, and I just simply ask for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wong Tam to speak.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I just want to keep my remarks very brief, but I do want the members today to take a look at the attachment 1, which is the letter from our chief planner specifically to the province with respect to providing them feedback on changes to the Planning Act, changes to how the province is now issuing MZOs. And I think that we can all agree that our chief planner is, of course, a very gentle man, a very committed man to good planning. But if you want to really see him in his most diplomatic ways, telling the province to, follow the rules without saying it in the ways that you and I would say it, I would suggest you give that letter a read. Because essentially the province, of course, is saying that the rules don't apply to them. And for our chief planner and everybody in the planning profession and the planning sector, I don't see how they could accept that. And certainly it was not accepted by our chief planner. So thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to point that out. And thank you to our chief planner for standing up for the City of Toronto and also for good planning across Ontario.
Madam Speaker, I have a point of order, if I may, to simply request to separate item 1 from the other two.
Separate item 1.
Separate item 1, yeah.
Okay. Okay, it's on the screen. Recorded vote.
Madam Speaker, Part 1 carries. The vote is 18-5.
Okay. Part 2. Recorded vote.
Madam Speaker, the balance of the item carries. The vote is 19-4.
Thank you. Our next item is PH 22.9, Rapid Housing Initiative at 222 Spadina and 877 Yonge Street. Councillor Bailao, you held the item down.
I do, Madam Speaker, but I don't have questions of staff.
Pardon?
I did, but I don't have questions of staff. I don't know if that other members do, but I don't.
Does anybody have any questions of staff? Okay, to speak, Councillor Bailao.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. These are the two first acquisitions that we've made with the Rapid Housing Federal Program. And this, as most members are aware as well, in the budget, in the federal budget as well, we've got the phase 2. So we're expectantly awaiting for how much we'll be getting on phase 2. But these are the first two acquisitions. And I just wanted to thank the local councillors that have been working with their communities and with city staff to move the projects forward, to have the meetings and the information flowing through the community, and also to our city staff. This we're moving very quickly on a few fronts, and I know that they've been celebrating the closing of these two deals that will translate in about 300 supportive housing units that are now funded in their capital side and also with supportive dollars. And I just wanted to acknowledge the hard work of everybody and thank the local councillors for all their support and enthusiasm in embracing these two projects. And the mayor, who has been a true champion on these initiatives and participating in the local meetings and really working with the local councillors on this initiative. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holliday to speak.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to say that I appreciate the opportunity to be able to cast a vote on this because further than my previous comments on MZOs, I'm glad that it's before council. My personal preference would have been that these followed either the Committee of Adjustment or the Committee of Adjustment and Rezoning. And that's why I'm going to vote against the MZO. But otherwise, these could have been submissions following those processes. Thank you.
Oh. Thank you.
I just would like a recorded vote.
Okay, Councillor Layton to speak.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'll try to be very brief. I wanted to thank first our city staff as one of the local councillors who will be welcoming our new neighbors into our community. I'm very happy with the work that staff have done on the file and congratulate them on the acquisition. I'd also like to thank our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bailao, as well as the Mayor, Mayor Tory, for both being champions of this program. We see supportive housing as being a critical part of addressing our homelessness and shelter needs in our city. It fills a space that has gotten and far too often been neglected as a useful housing option. And part of that is because it takes so much coordination between the various levels of government. And there was a time this year when the provincial government wasn't funding our supportive housing expansion in the city of Toronto. I'm happy to say that for this year, that funding has been secured. Now we're going to have to fight for that in the future. We've got to make sure that MPPs know that this is the cost-effective, this is the compassionate approach to housing those most in need in our city. I'd also like to give a shout out to Councillor Bradford and again Councillor Bailão for being champions in their own wards of projects of supporting housing projects in their ward. And I know that others like Councillor Crawford and perhaps others on this call have done the same. It's incumbent upon us to let our staff do their work, to identify sites that will bring people inside. It's cruel to think that at some point in time during the winter that there are those that might not welcome facilities and housing like this into their communities.